On a crisp autumn afternoon, the sun cast golden rays over the bustling streets of an upscale shopping district. Aaliyah Thompson stepped out of her sleek silver sedan, her heels clicking softly against the pavement as she made her way toward Chic and Commerce, one of the most exclusive boutiques in town. Known for its luxurious designs and high-profile clientele, the boutique was a favorite among celebrities, influencers, and wealthy socialites. For Aaliyah, it wasn't about flaunting wealth or status. She simply loved fashion and enjoyed treating herself to something special every now and then. Aaliyah had always been confident in who she was, a successful marketing consultant with a keen eye for style and a warm smile that could light up any room. She dressed impeccably that day, wearing tailored trousers, a chic blouse, and a designer handbag slung casually over her shoulder. Her hair was styled in loose waves, framing her face perfectly. As she entered the boutique, she felt like just another shopper looking for inspiration. What she didn't know was that this visit would turn into something far more significant than picking out a dress. The moment Aaliyah stepped inside, the atmosphere seemed to shift subtly. The boutique was everything you'd expect from such an establishment. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, plush carpeting lined the floors, and racks of exquisite clothing were arranged artfully throughout the space. Soft classical music played in the background, creating an ambiance of sophistication. At first glance, everything appeared picture-perfect. But as Aaliyah began browsing through the racks, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She noticed the sales associates exchanging glances whenever she paused to examine a garment. Their expressions weren't welcoming. They were guarded, almost suspicious. One of them, a young woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a clipboard tucked under her arm, approached Aaliyah hesitantly. "Can I help you find something?" the associate asked, her tone polite but distant. It wasn't so much what she said as how she said it. There was an undertone of condescension, as though she doubted Aaliyah belonged there. Aaliyah smiled warmly, refusing to let the interaction sour her mood. "Yes, thank you," she replied graciously. "I'm looking for a cocktail dress, something elegant but not too flashy." The associate nodded stiffly and gestured vaguely toward a rack at the far end of the store. "You might find something over there," she muttered before walking away without offering further assistance. Undeterred, Aaliyah continued exploring the collection. She ran her fingers lightly over the fabrics, admiring the intricate designs and craftsmanship. When she spotted a stunning emerald green gown hanging on a mannequin near the fitting rooms, she felt a spark of excitement. Turning to another sales associate nearby, she asked, "Do you have this dress in my size?" The associate barely glanced at her before replying curtly, "I'm sorry, but that piece is no longer available." Aaliyah frowned slightly, sensing that something wasn't right. Before she could press further, she heard laughter coming from across the store. Glancing over, she saw another customer, a blonde woman in designer sunglasses and a fur coat, admiring the very same dress. To Aaliyah's astonishment, the same associate who had dismissed her moments earlier eagerly approached the new arrival. "Oh, we do have that dress in your size," the associate gushed. "Would you like to try it on?" Aaliyah's heart sank. There was no mistaking what had just happened. She had been treated differently, not because of her taste or budget, but because of the color of her skin. Feeling a mix of anger and humiliation bubbling inside her, she clenched her fists tightly. Determined to confront the situation head-on, she approached the manager's desk, where a middle-aged woman with sharp features and a clipboard stood organizing papers. "Excuse me," Aaliyah said firmly, her voice steady, despite the emotions swirling within her. "I need to speak with you about something." The manager looked up, her expression unreadable. "Is there a problem?" she asked coolly. "Yes, there is," Aaliyah replied. "One of your associates told me a dress wasn't available, only to offer it to someone else moments later. That's not acceptable behavior, and I think you should address it." Instead of apologizing or investigating the claim, the manager's demeanor shifted instantly. Her lips curled into a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ma'am, our staff is trained to provide excellent service to all our customers," she said dismissively. If you feel dissatisfied, perhaps this isn't the right store for you. Aaliyah blinked, taken aback by the audacity of the response. Are you suggesting I leave because I called out discriminatory behavior? She asked incredulously. I'm suggesting you leave because you're causing a scene. The manager shot back, her tone icy. Several other customers turned to watch the exchange, some whispering amongst themselves. Aaliyah felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment, but she refused to back down. Fine, she said finally, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. But trust me, you haven't seen the last of this. With that, Aaliyah turned on her heel and walked out of the boutique, her head held high despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. As she climbed back into her car, tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She pulled out her phone and dialed the one person she knew would understand the gravity of what had just happened. Her husband, Marcus Thompson. Little did anyone at Chic & Co. know, their actions had set off a chain reaction that would soon bring the entire establishment crashing down. As Aaliyah sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, she scrolled through her contacts until she found Marcus's name. Her fingers hovered over the call button for a moment as she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The weight of what had just happened was still fresh, and though she wanted nothing more than to leave the incident behind, she knew it wasn't something she could, or should, ignore. With a determined exhale, she pressed the call button. The phone rang only twice before Marcus picked up. His voice was warm and familiar, instantly calming her frazzled nerves. Hey, love, he said cheerfully. How's your day going? Aaliyah hesitated for a second, unsure of how to begin. She didn't want to burden him with negativity, but she also knew Marcus would want to hear the truth. Taking another steadying breath, she replied softly. Not great, honestly. Something unpleasant happened. Marcus's tone shifted immediately. He could always tell when something was wrong based on the smallest change in her voice. What is it? He asked, his words sharp with concern. Are you okay? I'm fine, Aaliyah assured him quickly, not wanting him to worry unnecessarily. But I need to tell you about something that just happened at Chic & Co. She went on to recount the entire incident, the dismissive sales associate, the blatant favoritism toward another customer, and finally the manager's cruel dismissal. As she spoke, her voice wavered between anger and sadness, but she made sure to keep her explanation clear and factual. There was a long pause on the other end of the line after she finished speaking. For a moment, Aaliyah wondered if the call had dropped. Then Marcus's voice came through, low and measured but laced with unmistakable fury. They did what? He growled, each word dripping with disbelief and indignation. It's okay, Marcus, Aaliyah said gently, though her own emotions were still raw. I just needed to let you know what happened. I don't expect you to do anything about it. I can handle it myself. No, Marcus interrupted firmly. This isn't okay. Not even close. This isn't just about you. It's about every person who has ever walked into a store and been treated like they don't belong because of their race. That kind of behavior doesn't get a free pass, especially not from people who claim to run exclusive businesses. Aaliyah sighed, knowing there was no point in arguing with him once he got like this. Marcus had built his empire from scratch, overcoming countless obstacles along the way, and he had zero tolerance for injustice. It was one of the things she admired most about him, but it also meant he rarely backed down from a fight. Still, she couldn't help but feel uneasy about involving him. Marcus, I appreciate you wanting to stand up for me, but maybe we should just let it go. I don't want to make a bigger deal out of this than it already is. You're not making a big deal out of anything, Marcus countered. Those people made a choice to treat you poorly, and they need to face the consequences of that decision. Trust me, Aaliyah. You deserve better than this, and so does everyone else who might walk into that store tomorrow or the next day. Before Aaliyah could respond, Marcus continued, his mind already racing ahead. Listen, I'll take care of this. You focus on taking care of yourself right now. But promise me one thing. Don't let them make you doubt your worth. What happened in there says far more about them than it does about you. Aaliyah felt a lump rise in her throat. Despite Everything hearing Marcus speak with such conviction reminded her of why she loved him so deeply. He had a way of making her feel seen and valued, even in moments when the world tried its hardest to do the opposite. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find out," Marcus replied warmly. "Now give me a few minutes to make some calls. I'll update you soon." True to his word, Marcus wasted no time springing into action. After hanging up with Aaliyah, he immediately contacted his team of lawyers, instructing them to gather any available information on Sheik & Co., including past complaints of discrimination and unethical practices. Next, he reached out to his public relations advisor, a seasoned professional named Rachel, who specialized in crisis management. Together, they began drafting a strategy to address the situation publicly while ensuring maximum impact. While Marcus worked behind the scenes, Aaliyah decided to take matters into her own hands in a different way. Sitting in her car, she opened her social media account and typed out a heartfelt post detailing her experience at the boutique. She included specific details about the encounter, emphasizing how it made her feel, not just as a customer, but as a human being. Before hitting send, she paused, rereading the message to ensure it struck the right balance between vulnerability and strength. Satisfied, she posted it and turned off her phone, needing a break from the whirlwind of emotions. Within minutes, her post gained traction. Friends, family members, and followers flooded her comment section with messages of support, sharing their own stories of similar experiences. Some expressed outrage on her behalf, while others praised her for speaking up. Hashtags like Racker Justice for Aaliyah and End Retail Racism began trending almost instantly, drawing attention from local news outlets and online communities alike. Journalists started reaching out, eager to cover the growing scandal. Back at his office, Marcus monitored the situation closely, watching as the narrative unfolded exactly as he'd anticipated. He knew the power of public opinion and understood that exposing systemic issues often required shining a spotlight on individual cases. By amplifying Aaliyah's story, he hoped to spark a larger conversation about racism and inequality in retail spaces. At the same time, he prepared to escalate the matter legally, ensuring that Sheik & Comers wouldn't be able to brush the incident under the rug. By late afternoon, Marcus received confirmation that several major investors and retail partners had begun severing ties with Sheik & Co., citing concerns over the brand's reputation and ethics. The company's stock value plummeted, sending shockwaves through the industry. Employees scrambled to contain the damage, but it was clear that the boutique's days were numbered. Though the events of the day had left her emotionally drained, Aaliyah found solace in knowing that she wasn't alone. Whether it was Marcus's unwavering support, the outpouring of love from her community, or the collective voices demanding change, she realized that standing up for herself had ignited something much bigger than she'd imagined. And as Marcus promised, this was only the beginning. The hours following Aaliyah's social media post felt like a whirlwind, not just for her, but for everyone connected to the situation. Her words had struck a chord with people across the country, resonating deeply with those who had faced similar experiences of discrimination in retail spaces. What started as a personal account of injustice quickly snowballed into a movement, fueled by shared outrage and calls for accountability. By evening, screenshots of Aaliyah's post were everywhere, shared on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and even TikTok. Influencers and activists joined the conversation, amplifying her story and encouraging their followers to speak out about their own encounters with racism in high-end stores. The hashtags Justice for Aaliyah and End Retail Racism dominated trending lists, sparking debates about systemic inequality and privilege within the fashion industry. People weren't just sharing their anger, they were organizing boycotts, tagging Sheik & Co.'s official accounts and leaving scathing reviews online. Within hours, the boutique's once pristine reputation was tarnished beyond recognition. Inside Sheik & Co.'s headquarters, panic began to set in. Victoria Langston, the owner of the boutique, initially dismissed the backlash as fleeting drama. "These things blow over," she told her assistant dismissively during an emergency meeting. But as the negative comments poured in and sales figures plummeted, reality hit hard. Calls from concerned investors and business partners flooded her office, each one more urgent than the last. Retail giants that had previously partnered with Chic & Co. for collaborations or featured collections started pulling out, citing reputational risks. Even suppliers hesitated to continue working with the brand, fearing association with controversy. Victoria tried to downplay the incident publicly, issuing a vague apology statement on the boutique's social media page. "We regret any misunderstanding that may have occurred," it read. Chic & Co. is committed to providing exceptional service to all our valued customers. But the response only fueled further criticism. Critics pointed out the lack of sincerity in the message, accusing Victoria of attempting to sweep the issue under the rug without addressing the root cause of the problem. Commenters tore apart the post, calling it tone-deaf and insincere. One user sarcastically remarked, "Misunderstanding, really? Treating someone differently because of their skin color isn't a misunderstanding, it's racism." Meanwhile, Marcus Thompson watched the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. He knew better than anyone how fragile reputations could be, especially in industries built on exclusivity and image. As he reviewed reports from his legal team detailing Chic & Co.'s history of discriminatory practices, including multiple unresolved complaints filed by former employees and customers, he realized this wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern, one that needed to be exposed and dismantled. Marcus decided to escalate the pressure. Using his vast network of contacts, he reached out to key players in the retail world, including major department stores, luxury brands, and investment firms tied to Chic & Co. He shared evidence of the company's unethical behavior, ensuring that no stone was left unturned. His reputation preceded him, and many of these entities were quick to distance themselves from the embattled boutique. Some terminated contracts outright, while others froze partnerships indefinitely. For a brand like Chic & Co., which relied heavily on its relationships with high-profile collaborators, losing these connections was catastrophic. Local news outlets picked up the story, airing segments that highlighted Alia's experience alongside testimonials from other victims of discrimination at the boutique. Reporters interviewed shoppers who described being ignored, followed around the store, or treated rudely by staff based solely on their appearance. One woman recounted how she had been accused of shoplifting simply because she wore casual clothing instead of designer labels. Another shared how a sales associate refused to assist her until a white customer walked in, at which point the same dress she'd asked about suddenly became available. As the media coverage intensified, public sentiment shifted decisively against Chic & Co. Protesters gathered outside the boutique's flagship location, holding signs that read, "No justice, no sales, and racism has no place in fashion." Customers canceled appointments, returned purchases, and demanded refunds en masse. Employees inside the store looked visibly shaken, unsure of what to say to the angry crowd or how to salvage the situation. Behind closed doors, tensions ran high among the staff, with some blaming management for mishandling the crisis and others fearing for their jobs. Back at home, Alia scrolled through her phone, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of support pouring in from strangers around the globe. Messages flooded her inbox, ranging from heartfelt notes of solidarity to offers of help from lawyers and advocates eager to join the fight. Though she hadn't anticipated such widespread attention, she couldn't deny the sense of empowerment growing within her. She realized that her decision to share her story had given others the courage to do the same, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond her initial intent. But as gratifying as the support was, Alia also felt a pang of guilt. She worried about the employees at Chic & Co., many of whom were likely innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. She didn't want them to lose their livelihoods because of decisions made by higher-ups. When she voiced this concern to Marcus, he nodded thoughtfully. "You're right," he said. "This isn't about punishing individuals, it's about holding institutions accountable. We'll make sure there's a path forward for those affected, whether it's helping them find new opportunities or advocating for reforms within the industry." With that assurance, Alia allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about the events of the day, The humiliation she'd felt in the boutique, the strength she'd drawn from Marcus's unwavering support, and the overwhelming solidarity she now experienced from complete strangers. It was surreal, almost dreamlike to see how one person's voice could spark such profound change. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but she was ready to face it head-on, armed with the knowledge that she wasn't alone. As night fell, the lights in Chic & Co.'s windows dimmed, casting shadows over racks of unsold clothing and empty cash registers. The once bustling store now stood eerily quiet, a stark contrast to its usual vibrancy. For Victoria Langston and her team, the realization was sinking in. They had underestimated the power of collective action and the resolve of a woman determined to stand up for herself and others. Little did they know, the worst was yet to come. Exactly 1 hour after Aaliyah had walked out of Chic & Co., a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the boutique. The vehicle was unassuming, but those who recognized it knew exactly who it belonged to: Marcus Thompson. Stepping out of the car with an air of quiet authority, Marcus was flanked by a team of lawyers, public relations experts, and security personnel. His tailored suit and polished demeanor made him look every bit the billionaire mogul he was, but his expression carried none of the warmth or charm that usually accompanied him in public appearances. This time his face was a mask of cold determination. As Marcus entered the boutique, the once bustling store fell eerily silent. Employees froze in place, their eyes wide with shock as they realized who had just walked through the door. Customers paused mid-conversation, some whispering among themselves while others stared openly at the man now commanding the room's attention. Victoria Langston, the boutique's owner, emerged from her office, her heels clicking nervously against the marble floor. She forced a smile, though it wavered under the weight of Marcus's piercing gaze. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What brings you here today?" Marcus didn't bother with pleasantries. He cut straight to the point, his tone calm but laced with steel. "We need to talk about what happened earlier with my wife, Mrs. Aaliyah Thompson." Victoria blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Your wife?" she stammered, glancing around as if searching for confirmation. When no one spoke up, she cleared her throat and tried to regain composure. "I assure you, Mr. Thompson, we pride ourselves on providing excellent service to all our customers. If there was any misunderstanding—" "This wasn't a misunderstanding," Marcus interrupted sharply. "It was discrimination, plain and simple. And not only are you going to answer for it, but you're also going to take full responsibility for the harm your business has caused." Before Victoria could respond, Marcus gestured to his legal team, who stepped forward holding thick folders filled with documents. One of them handed a file directly to Victoria, whose hands shook as she took it. "This is a cease and desist order," Marcus explained. "You'll find evidence of systemic racism within your company, including past complaints from employees and customers. We've already contacted your investors, partners, and suppliers. Many have decided to sever ties with your brand. You'll also notice documentation outlining our intent to sue for damages if this behavior continues." The color drained from Victoria's face as she flipped through the pages, her panic growing with each line she read. She looked up at Marcus, desperation creeping into her voice. "Surely we can resolve this without involving litigation," she pleaded. "Chic & Co. has always been a pillar of luxury and sophistication. We can work together to ensure something like this never happens again." Marcus let out a humorless laugh. "Actions speak louder than words, Ms. Langston. Your apology on social media was hollow, and your refusal to acknowledge the severity of the situation speaks volumes. You've had countless opportunities to address these issues internally, yet you chose to ignore them. Now, you'll face the consequences." As the confrontation unfolded, word spread quickly among the boutique's staff and patrons. Some employees began quietly packing up their belongings, sensing that the end was near. Others huddled together, whispering anxiously about what would happen next. Meanwhile, curious onlookers gathered outside the store, snapping photos and recording videos of the scene unfolding inside. Social media lit up once again, with live updates flooding platforms like Twitter and Instagram. The hashtag, Pure Justice for Aaliyah, trended even higher as people eagerly awaited news of what Marcus would do next. Determined to send a clear message, Marcus turned his attention to the crowd of employees and customers still lingering in the store. Raising his voice slightly so everyone could hear, he addressed them directly. To the employees of Chic & Co., I want to make one thing very clear. This isn't about punishing hardworking individuals. Many of you may be victims of a toxic system yourselves. However, standing by silently while injustice occurs makes you complicit. Change starts with accountability. And today, that accountability begins with this establishment. His words hung heavy in the air, leaving both employees and management visibly shaken. For Victoria, the final blow came when Marcus announced his intention to shut down the boutique permanently, unless immediate corrective measures were taken. By tomorrow morning, this location will close its doors indefinitely, he declared. And trust me, this is only the beginning. Every other Chic & Co. outlet will follow suit until meaningful reforms are implemented across the board. With that, Marcus signaled to his team, and they began distributing official notices to the staff and removing branding materials from the store. As the reality of the situation sank in, tears streamed down the faces of several employees while others stormed out in frustration. Victoria stood frozen, clutching the folder in her hands as if it might somehow offer salvation. But deep down, she knew it was over. Her dream of running a high-end boutique empire was crumbling before her eyes, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Outside, the crowd erupted into cheers as news of the shutdown spread. Protesters chanted slogans like, "Accountability matters" and "No justice, no peace," celebrating what they saw as a victory against systemic racism. Reporters jostled for position, eager to capture reactions from bystanders and participants alike. Among the throng of supporters stood Aaliyah herself, watching quietly from a distance. Though she hadn't planned to attend, curiosity had gotten the better of her, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication as she witnessed the culmination of Marcus's efforts. Later that evening, as the lights in Chic & Co.'s windows flickered off for the last time, Marcus joined Aaliyah in their living room. Exhaustion lined his features, but there was a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. "It's done," he said simply, pulling her into a tight embrace. "They won't hurt anyone else like they hurt you." Aaliyah rested her head against his chest, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude wash over her. "Thank you," she murmured, softly, "for everything." But even as they celebrated this moment of triumph, both knew the fight was far from over. Shutting down one store was just the first step toward dismantling the deeply ingrained biases that plagued the retail industry. The real challenge lay ahead, ensuring that such injustices didn't happen again, not just at Chic & Co., but anywhere else where people dared to judge others based on the color of their skin. And with Marcus and Aaliyah leading the charge, the world was about to witness a powerful movement for change. In the weeks following the dramatic shutdown of Chic & Co., the fallout rippled far beyond the boutique's shuttered doors. What had started as a personal incident involving Aaliyah and Marcus Thompson had evolved into something much larger, a national conversation about discrimination, privilege, and accountability in retail spaces. The story dominated headlines, sparking debates on morning talk shows, late-night programs, and even legislative hearings. For many, it was a wake-up call. For others, it was validation that systemic racism still thrived in industries where exclusivity often masked prejudice. Aaliyah found herself at the center of this whirlwind, though she never sought the spotlight. Initially hesitant to embrace her role as an advocate, she soon realized that her voice carried weight, and that using it could inspire meaningful change. With Marcus by her side, they launched the Thompson Equity Initiative, a foundation dedicated to promoting diversity, inclusion, and fairness in businesses across the country. Their mission was clear: to create environments where everyone felt valued, respected, and empowered, regardless of their race, gender, or socioeconomic background. The initiative focused on three key pillars: education, advocacy, and reform. Through partnerships with community organizations, they developed workshops and training sessions aimed at helping companies identify and address discriminatory practices. These programs weren't just lectures, they were interactive experiences designed to challenge biases and foster empathy among employees and executives alike. Change starts with understanding, Aaliyah often said during these sessions. If we can teach people to see each other as equals, then we've taken the first step toward creating a more inclusive world. One of the foundation's most impactful projects was its grant program for minority-owned businesses. Recognizing the barriers faced by entrepreneurs of color, the Thompsons pledged millions to provide funding, mentorship, and resources to help these ventures thrive. From small boutiques to tech startups, recipients of the grants shared stories of how the support transformed their lives and allowed them to pursue dreams they once thought impossible. One recipient, a young black designer named Jasmine Carter, used the grant to launch her own sustainable fashion line. Within months, her designs caught the attention of major retailers, proving that talent knows no boundaries when given the opportunity to shine. Meanwhile, Marcus leveraged his influence to push for broader reforms within the retail industry. He met with policymakers, urging them to strengthen anti-discrimination laws and hold businesses accountable for unethical behavior. His efforts paid off when several states passed legislation requiring mandatory bias training for all retail employees and imposing stricter penalties for violations. Retailers who had previously turned a blind eye to discriminatory practices now scrambled to implement new policies, fearing the same fate as Chic & Co. But perhaps the most profound impact came from the countless individuals inspired by Aaliyah's courage. Her willingness to speak out encouraged others to share their own stories, amplifying voices that had long been silenced. Social media became a platform for collective healing, with hashtags like I Stand Together and Heartbreak, the bias uniting people from different walks of life. Support groups formed online, offering safe spaces for victims of discrimination to connect and find solace in shared experiences. For Victoria Langston, the former owner of Chic & Co., the aftermath was devastating. Once heralded as a savvy entrepreneur, she now faced public scorn and financial ruin. Investors abandoned her, lawsuits piled up, and attempts to revive her brand under a new name failed miserably. In a rare interview months later, Victoria admitted her mistakes, acknowledging that her pursuit of exclusivity had blinded her to the harm caused by her actions. I let greed and arrogance cloud my judgment, she confessed, and I lost everything because of it. While some viewed her apology as too little, too late, others saw it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power. As time passed, Aaliyah and Marcus continued to champion their cause, traveling the country to speak at conferences, universities, and corporate events. They emphasized that true progress required ongoing effort and vigilance. This isn't a one-time fix, Marcus told audiences during a keynote speech. It's a commitment to doing better every single day. We have to be willing to listen, learn, and act, even when it's uncomfortable. Their work also extended to supporting employees affected by the closure of Chic & Co. Many of the boutique's former staff members struggled to find new jobs, burdened by the stigma of association with the scandal. Determined to help, Aaliyah partnered with local employment agencies to host job fairs specifically for displaced workers. She personally mentored several individuals, helping them transition into new careers and regain their confidence. These people didn't create the problem, she explained. They deserve a second chance. By the end of the year, the Thompsons' efforts had sparked tangible change. Major retailers adopted transparent hiring practices, implemented diverse representation in advertising campaigns, and established anonymous reporting systems for employees to flag discriminatory behavior. Schools incorporated lessons on equity and inclusion into their curriculums, ensuring the next generation grew up with a deeper understanding of equality. Even competitors of Chic & Co. took note, vowing to prioritize ethics over profits. For Aaliyah, the journey had been transformative. What began as a painful experience had become a catalyst for growth, not just for her, but for society as a whole. She learned that standing up for oneself wasn't just an act of defiance, it was an act of hope. And while the road ahead would undoubtedly present challenges, she remained steadfast in her belief that change was possible. On New Year's Eve, Aaliyah stood on the balcony of their home, gazing at the city skyline illuminated by fireworks. Marcus joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You did this," he said softly, his pride evident in his voice. "You changed the game." Aaliyah smiled, leaning into him. "We did it together," she corrected. "And there's still so much more to do." As the clock struck midnight, marking the start of a new year, Aaliyah felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight against injustice was far from over, but she knew they were moving in the right direction. One step, one story.